brothers, sisters. This earth has everything that we need to thrive as a species. Now, the entire system of evolution has produced us, in conjunction with the united soul that we all share, in conjunction with that part that is the source, that we must return back to, that some people call God. That is the grander whole in its combination that everything comes and must go back to. That source that cannot be really narrowed down to a single being, but the combination of all beings. That source has given us this planet, that we may be its shepherds, not its destroyers. Now, as we are advancing into this new age, we have the same opportunity that all past generations have had, to live in conjunction and in coexistence with the earth and its resources, with its bounty, and to live and coexist with one another as human beings. We are the greatest threat to ourselves and the greatest threat to Earth. What we must not just focus on is our own political and religious ideology, but the fact that generations from now, this Earth may not be sustainable. We must create a personal life. Every individual must realize that he must do his part, and she must do her part, in order to create a planet that does not only give, but also receives. That we plant seeds where we take trees. That we use green power, solar power. The easiest power for us to consume, the easiest power for us to have an endless supply of, is not being used to its fullest potential. Light is literally being wasted. For the sake of darkness, for the sake of pollution, for the sake of the sickness that we have become so accustomed to, that politicians are willing to take bribes from the industries like coal. Even sometimes natural gas can be very harmful. Or nuclear power. It can become dangerous at certain times. Gasoline. It's very easy to produce cars that do not run on gasoline. But there has to be stepping up of not only our politicians, but every individual in how we use energy. Because if we do not, this planet will not always have everything that we need to survive if we use it all up. Now, the way that we come together. First, let's look at how throughout human history, we've seen that the older people always say, okay, the next generation is getting worse. It's worse off. It's different, so it's worse. It's doing this and that wrong. And there's this idea of Adam and Eve, and since then, we're just getting progressively worse. Progressively going off the cliff, or going downhill. And now when it comes to the consumption of resources, we have entered an age in which consumption is possible in grander scales that we could never have imagined. But we are still given the same choices. And besides our consumption, we must realize that we've come very far. We've come very far in how we view each other. Segregation in the United States, in the model for first world countries around the world, only ended decades ago, not 100 years ago. So, I wonder, how are we really getting worse? Okay, let's say the music's getting worse. Let's say people aren't as committed in relationships. These are all things that we experience on ground zero. Whenever you're on ground zero and you say, oh, why do kids dress that way now? Why do they believe this or that? Why don't they have any respect? Why don't they work as hard as we did? It all comes down to personal perspective and personal bias. When you're on ground zero, it's easier to see the younger generation as not being as hardworking, as not being as traditional, like we were when we were kids. And it comes down to not necessarily us not being more as hardworking or traditional. We're understanding ourselves and what's available to us in different ways. It comes down to people realizing in every generation that their life is running out. And that they're so worried about the life to come for the next generation a lot of the time. Sometimes it's just bitterness, but a lot of the time, they're so worried about what's going to happen to the next generation because they're not going to be there to help, that they become hypercritical. Now, there are some ways I agree with elders. There are some ways I definitely agree that there are traditions of our ancestors that were very good, but we have to understand and reinvent ourselves as human beings in our own way in every generation. We can't stay the same. To stay the same is to fall off that precipice ever more quickly. To get to the end of ourselves, the end of what we can do as humanity, as a united humanity, more quickly. Now, when we get into how we should treat each other, religion, a lot of the time, though I consider myself Hindu and I consider myself a spiritual person, and some people have called me Vedanta, some people have called me a universalist, I think that just like in all the times before, there is too much of a lack of comparison between one idea and another, between one religion and another. There's too little willingness to sit down. But we have made great strides. Now, in the Muslim world, it has seemed to become more extreme in the recent decades. But around the world, people are far more, as a whole, likely to listen to one another. We are connected in ways that our ancestors could never have dreamed of being connected. They had the spiritual ways of connection, many of them in the past, but we have the technological ways. And combined with spirituality, technology and spirituality can lead us into an existence that even we as the next generation cannot imagine at this time. Because we're going forward at such a pace that we haven't really evaluated how we're moving forward, because we're going so fast. It's like a snowball. Humanity is a snowball just going down the hill, rolling and rolling, rolling, picking up speed. And if we don't know exactly where we're going to end up just yet because we haven't evaluated ourselves as a humanity, I don't think. We don't consider ourselves enough. Now, we have everything we need to achieve internal victory spiritually. And we have everything that we need. Humanity has everything that it needs to achieve victory over extinction. Now, we have this danger of extinction. We've always had it. During the Black Plague, I'm sure it seemed to many people that humanity was dying, that it was the end time. And there's a lot of terrible things that are going on right now. Terrible crises, terrible building up for war, terrible consumption of resources. It seems like we're getting closer to the end because we're on ground zero, and that is a threat. But I and many other people, and many other people before me, still have faith in humanity, still have faith that we can move forward, that we can learn from our mistakes, both inwardly and outwardly. We can still join with our planet in a true symbiosis, and not just consume. We can still find ourselves within and allow other people to find themselves, and for that to be okay, without a damnation of our fellow human beings. Now, there is, as I said, this opportunity, the same opportunity that our past generations have had. And like I said, to use our resources wisely. But what we also must realize is that we have to use our resources effectively. Which means in order for everyone to thrive, we have to give more. Every nation has to give at least a little bit more starting off to other nations that need it. We're talking about food, medicine, personnel that can provide assistance. We all need to give a little bit more to one another. This can happen on the individual level, but it definitely needs to happen on the national level. No doubt. Because to have something is not enough. To even be sustainable is not enough. It is to share. Because even if we become completely sustainable because of technology, and we still are greedy with one another, and we still accept the greed that has been handed down from generation to generation, from some tribal leaders to some kings, to some monarchs, to some oligarchs, hegemonies, countries, states, presidents. Greed has perpetuated itself because far too few, has truly addressed it. And I feel like in this age of communication, of technologically marvelous communication, we have a great opportunity to examine everything that other people are and everything that we've been in our past. We must understand the ways of our ancestors and use what is good, evolve with what is effective spiritually, and also realize that we must change. We cannot go back. We can only go forward. So to focus on the past, to be obsessed with the past, is something that you have to drop. Because the past no longer exists. This moment is all that exists. We can imagine the future. We can fear certain things about the future. But we can never allow our fears to make us more violent. Or our trepidation about traditions changing to make us more violent, bitter, and eager to hold everyone else back. We must accept our past and future in conjunction with our own being in the moment, so that we live not only in symbiosis with this planet, but with what humanity was, what humanity will be, and what humanity is. This relationship must be wonderful, just like the source that we all must return to. Now, humanity can reach ever greater heights that we cannot imagine. We can go to other solar systems, go to other galaxies. We can evolve spiritually and physically into higher beings of consciousness, beings completely aware of consciousness, and not just cut off by the body, by the obsession with the body, by the materialism of society. We have so much potential. Let's take advantage of it. You can be the exemplar of victory over extinction. What will you do with the knowledge of yourself and your situation? Will you take advantage of it? Or will we not quite live up to everything that we could be, like past generations? Because we haven't yet, but we've gotten close, and we can get there. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. Be your own exemplar in your life. An exemplar of strength, of victory, of truth, of love, of coexistence, of acceptance, of compassion. Exemplify these virtues in yourself, in your life, and spread them around into your environment, to your community, to your friends, to your neighbors, and even to people abroad. Communicate, love, and create a sustainable world. Thank you very much for watching. All of you, have a great day.